welcome back.
Thank you for having
You
me.
did it. You made it across around the entire UK.
Yeah. It still doesn't feel like it really happened. It's a bit weird, but like, obviously know it happened, but it still, I don't feel any different in that. I actually don't know. I still haven't figured out how I feel about that. Because it doesn't feel like I've done it, if that makes sense.
Like you're just back to normal, as if.
It's, well, very different version of normal, but I'm back to my normal. Well, after 3 days, I was back to my day job, which was brutal. But it's a really odd thing because it's a stages thing. So it's not like you kind of, say if you cross the Atlantic, you set off and it's just this sea forever, and then all of a sudden you turn up in America. You're going onto land, and then you're coming off, and you're going on, and because it's just broken up so much, it doesn't I guess the magnitude of it doesn't actually feel. I honestly can't quite explain how that actually feels, but it almost feels like when you say stuff like that, that's not me. I still cannot figure that out.
Yeah. It's like some whole other person.
Yeah. Do you know what? It actually feels like someone else did it. Even though, when you're doing it, you're so kind of immersed in the whole experience of doing it. But once it's done, because for me, you live every single second, minute, hour, day of it. And so I guess the changes that happen are so, well, they have felt very big over that time frame, but because it's that lived experience, it almost feels like there's no change because it's progressive.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to kind of look back and kind of see any change from before and after. Yeah. And I guess that's why it kind of feels like it was someone else.
Because it was 58 days, and so it was almost, even though like in your lifespan that feels like a short period of time, it's still like one day at a time over those 58 days that you were actually feeling those changes. Yeah.
But I think the thing that probably the thing that I was most aware of over those 58 days is that if you ask me today, what have you done every single day since you stopped? I'd be like, I've no idea. Like I couldn't recall. Like I could recall tomorrow. I could probably recall up into the weekend, but into next week, I don't think I could recall what's happened. But with those 58 days, I can recall every single one of those 58 days because that experience was so rich. And so although it was only 2 months, there's almost like 3 or 4 years worth of like memories within that 2-month period. Maybe even more than that compared to kind of like if the amount of days that I can recall over, 2019 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's probably nowhere near, 60.
Wow. That's amazing that it sticks out so much in your head.
Yeah. But I also think that's because it's like, it was so traumatic.
Yeah. Like not in a good way.
Yeah. And so, when I've been talking to people about the trip, it's, it's been characterized by the opposing serendipitous good luck that I had on land versus the awful luck that I had on the sea. Yeah. And so everything was either really good or really bad. And so there wasn't any day that was just average. And so because it was either really good and really bad, it was also distinct. And I think that's why I feel like I can recall all of it.
Yeah. And so much of it was really bad.
Yeah.
Because when we last spoke, when you were in Thurso, that was like, I think you said you had like 2 or 3 good days by that point.
I had I had one good day in Ireland. And
Sorry, not 2 or 3, just one.
yeah,
It was one good day.
Like, do you know what, the Irish Sea crossing was special?
Yeah.
But like, my God, that was so hard. That was so hard. There's always something good to be taken from the bad days, but as far as I've enjoyed myself at sea days, 3, I reckon.
Yeah.
One in Ireland, the crossing over from Northern Ireland to Islay was good, and then the day from Isle of Mull to Mallaig, that was a good day, and then it was just, everything else was just brutal.
How many days did you end up stuck in Thurso?
I think I was there 8 days. Thurso was like, a prime example of being incredibly unlucky, but also very, very lucky.
Yeah.
A lady emailed me through my website to offer me her holiday home, which is where I stayed for those 8 days, because otherwise there's no way I could have afforded to have stayed in a hotel for 8 days. It probably would have been on the beach, camping. And that just, I think the only thing that would have genuinely caused me to quit would have been injury, but psychologically that would have been so tough.
Yeah.
To just be 8 days in a tent in Thurso. That was like the furthest away. And also, it's not like 8 days, it's 8 days in a tent, howling gales, wind, rain. It was disgusting.
Oh my God.
So I was very lucky.
Yeah.
Basically.
But that was also the point where like your body started to shut down.
Yeah. So I think at that point I'd kayaked just over 1,000 miles. And yeah, what was it? I think I was there, I think it was day 25, 26 that I turned up. So that's nearly a month of paddling, anything between 7 and 10 hours on average a day. And so when I stopped, it literally just felt like my body was just going, almost the life went out of me. You start feeling really fatigued, weak, almost just a little bit frail. After 8 days, I started coming down with a chest infection just as the weather started clearing up. And there was just no option. I just had to kind of get on and go, despite feeling like absolute crap. And that lasted. Well, to be honest, the fatigue. So I think there was an element of my body feeling like it was shutting down, and then there was like a chest infection element, and so there are these two things that were contributing to me feeling, worse than you would typically expect to feel despite doing something like this, and that probably lasted until Norfolk. It was only really when I got to East Anglia, and there was a day where I was just like, right, I'm just gonna pretty much rest for the whole day, and then I did I think it was a 40 or 50k paddle into the evening, because I felt like I just needed that rest to actually semi-recover. So it took that was probably another 10 days, 2 weeks.
Where you were paddling down the East Coast with a chest infection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was so bad. Oh, and I forgot about, I haven't really thought about that aspect of it, but when I rounded the Pentland Firth down to Holy Island, which was my first stop in England, people were lovely, they're messaging me all the time, and so many people were like, oh Mike, you've done the worst of it now, the East Coast is easy. And I was just, East Coast is easy if you've got the prevailing winds, which are westerlies. So these offshore winds, because they're blowing offshore, they don't have time to generate the waves. But I was getting southerlies, which were headwinds, northerlies, which were tailwinds, but they create these huge swells. And I was also getting easterlies as well. So it was only when I was down in Norfolk did the prevailing wind then kick in, and it only kicked in for like a day. And then when I had to do the Thames Estuary crossing, I had to do that into a headwind. And then literally, it was the rest of it was all headwind. It was just, the second to last day, oh my God, just, that was a test. Because I'd obviously told everyone that I'm going to finish on this day.
Yeah, we were all
there.
Yeah, and I mean, we were all wondering if you were going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
Because it looked really ambitious.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew you would make it there eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, he's committed to this time and date.
Yeah.
That's a long way to go.
It was.
In those conditions.
Yeah, because I can't remember how fast it was blowing, but it was just a headwind right down my throat.
Yeah.
From Dungeness to Eastbourne, and it's kind of this big bay, and I kind of had to make this decision whether I'd kind of tuck into the coast and make the most of whether there may or may not have been an eddy there, which I think there probably would have been a very nice big eddy, and I should have done that.
Yeah.
But I think it would have added another 6 or 7 kilometres on.
Yeah.
Just sweeping in. So I decided just to go from A to B, but because the headwind's slowing you down, which means you're out there longer, which means that you then catch the turning of the tide, and so then you're fighting against the tide and the headwind. And I was staring at the headland at Eastbourne for about 9 hours because it just wouldn't come. It was just, and I was like, I've committed to finishing tomorrow.
Yeah.
I've just got to keep going.
Wow. So you just kept going until you got there?
I kept going, and I wanted to make Brighton, but I literally, after getting around Beachy Head, I was literally done. And because it was blowing westerly, and I was now kind of like on an exposed bit of land, a lot of the beaches were dumping waves, and I was just like, if I can find a nice calm beach, I'm just getting out.
Yeah.
And then that left me just over 70k to do on the last day.
Yeah. And then you woke up really early that morning, didn't you?
Yeah. About 5 a.m. So
Yeah.
I think I ended up going to, I think it was just another one of those nights where you get 5 or 6 hours and then you just get on with it. Yeah. Yeah, it was, that second to last day was that was a tough one.
Oh my God.
That was and I was really hoping that the majority of my heart, well, I was hoping that I wouldn't have another day like that lined up for me, just because they were just soul destroying.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting how other people kind of perceive a journey like that, because it is, I think everyone looks upon it very differently.
Yeah. And you were very honest with your updates too, which I think,
I think I could have been more honest.
I bet you could have. Yeah. I bet. Like watching you get on the camera and say, hey, it was another like really crap day today. Headwind all day. This was the worst day of the trip so far.
Oh God. Well, do you know what, like that day from the Isle of Isla to the Isle of Mull?
Yep.
That was so bad. When I literally got off in the Isle of Mull, I gave my sister a call, and all I could do was cry down the end of the phone, because it's just like, and she was like, "Are you still on the sea?" And I was like, it felt so exposed.
Yeah.
So exposed and so utterly vulnerable to getting into a real solid pickle. Knowing what those conditions were like, I wouldn't opt to go out in them again.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd choose a different route. I'd go south of the island. I'd literally, anyone that's asked me how to kind of go round, I've literally, if there's any wind or swell, go south of Colonsay, because it was just awful.
And that was because there was all the like low-lying reefs and stuff too, right? So that was, you could have just been smashed onto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, the tides around Northern Ireland and the west coast islands of Scotland, they're kind of, the water's kind of sucking out over Northern Ireland, and so you kind of get, it's, you know, if the Thames is on red boards, and you can see it around a buoy, you know, the turbulence that a buoy creates.
Yep.
And that's kind of what happens with big islands. Creates these huge kind of torrents and boils, and then there's loads of reefs there as well. So the tide is going this way, the swell is going this way, the wind is going that way. It's all a mess over a very shallow bit of water, and it was also pissing it down, so the visibility was basically nil. And all you know, when I was kind of going through it, you could just see occasionally in the horizon just like these massive spouts of water just like shooting really high in the air. You're like, oh my God, what is that? And just like, all you know is that you don't want to go to where that is, but you don't know how big it is. And you know, that's happening there.
And the spouts are coming from the swell
hitting rocks.
Yeah, and just.
And so like, and I went when I got back, I looked on the map on Navionics, and just like, yeah, there's a scary here. It's literally the whole bay's peppered with them.
Oh my God.
So it was a really, really bad day. Really bad day, and I actually think if I provided an honest update, like a truly candid update, I think people would have probably told me just to don't get on the water again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was that bad. Yeah, but at the same time, the confidence that getting through that, or the confidence that came from getting through it, actually completely almost rationalised and normalised all other aspects of the coast. After getting through that, you know, the Dunnet Head around Thurso and the Pentland Firth, that was quite big. You know, it's big enough for people who were on the cliff looking down to watch me kind of go through. They actually didn't see me when I went through the tide race. And so they had a vantage point of like nearly 100 metres up, and they still couldn't see me. It was only when I came out the tidal race, they're like, oh, there he is.
Because the swell was so big?
Because the waves are too big, yeah. So it was all.
You were literally just.
They just didn't see me at all.
Down in the troughs. And
down in the trough, and I think if I was at the top, I was only at the top for a split second, so they didn't see me, and then, you know. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But.
Is that where you recorded some insane speeds?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that Isle of Mull day actually made me feel really quite confident going through that sort of stuff. So I actually felt comfortable enough, even though I had a bit of a chest infection at the time, to kind of push through it. And when I was going south of the Isle of Stroma, which is possibly the last third of the Pentland Firth, there was this channel of water, so the tide is literally just forcing through between the island and mainland UK, and there's this small channel that you can go through, and if you don't go down that channel, it's literally whirlpools either side and just loads of chop. But this channel was just so quick, and I think I did 5k in about 13 minutes, and I did a 2k in under 5 minutes. It was just ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's in a V8 with camping equipment.
Yeah.
If you took an actual
not
ski,
exactly at your peak. Kind of
no,
fitness.
and I that was like halfway through a 60-kilometer paddle.
Yeah.
I actually think if you went there with a, I mean, I did have very good conditions because I caught it on a spring tide, so a big tide.
Okay,
Good in a sense for that.
Right.
And I had a tailwind, so the conditions were great. But I actually think if you took an actual ski and you wanted to break a 1 kilometer record, you probably get under 2 minutes there.
Yeah.
Which is just like
wow.
shooting along.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fast. I've never been on anything like that before.
That is scary level fast.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Especially surrounded by whirlpools.
Yeah, it was a little bit like, I'm getting a little bit close to the edge of the channel, and the water is literally coming at a right angle to the stream. So it's just pushing round. And so it's just very aggressive.
Wow.
Yeah. But awesome as well.
Yeah. That was a good day.
That was a very good day. I almost, getting stuck in Thurso for 8 days almost felt like I was never gonna get home.
Yeah.
So to kind of finally get through that bottleneck and things like for the rest of the country, you don't get like bottleneck like that.
Yeah.
Oh God, it was such a relief. It was such a relief.
Oh my God.
And then I got ill.
Yeah. And then the chest infection full force.
And then I literally, I probably had about 4 hours of sleep because I was just feeling so crap. Yeah.
Wow. But you made it down the east coast of the country.
Yeah.
Headwinds and all.
Yes. Yeah.
And you made the date that you committed to in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
So that last day, you woke up 5 o'clock in the morning. You know you've got to get back to East Wittering Beach. You know people are meeting you there.
Yeah.
Tell me about what it was like on that day to finally make it home.
Do you know what? There are still aspects of this trip that I'm still trying to comprehend.
Yeah.
And I feel like it obviously doesn't do a moment like that justice to say, oh yeah, it was really nice. Because it was really nice, but there were so many things that fed into it being what it was. That's really difficult to truly comprehend how I feel or how I felt. There was obviously a huge amount of relief that this was coming to an end. At that point, my hands actually had got to a point where they were sustainable, but my back was killing, my shoulder was killing. I was just so fed up. Because it had taken longer than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
I missed various events. I missed seeing my niece and my nephew because they had to fly out to Brazil a week before. And so I was utterly fed up with this trip by that point. But also at the same time had this complete I should say complete, maybe not fully complete, but I appreciated what the trip had done for me with regards to, managing the grief. It introduced a sense of adventure into my life that that never really appealed to me.
Yeah.
And I'd met so many amazing people that I would have never have met had I not taken on a trip like this. And so it's this cocktail of very confusing emotions of wanting it to end but not wanting it to end. And coming around Surfski to see the Spinnaker was just it's bizarre. I'd literally spent 58 days envisaging this moment, thinking about how it would feel. What would I say? Now this is done. And when you're actually living that moment, it's almost a bit too overwhelming to comprehend how you feel. You almost are just almost in a daze, I think. And it was hugely overwhelming to finally bring it all to an end, and to have, you know, so many friends and family there was just like, it was so lovely. It was like one of the things that I didn't realise would happen off this trip is that, you know, all of a sudden, although you're really alone, you feel so incredibly loved because of all the support that people give you when you're doing something like this. And I guess that was just a physical manifestation of all of that support on the beach. And it was like something that I'd never experienced before. I think there are a number of things with this trip. It's probably might even take years to figure out. Yeah. Because it has just been so, as cliche as it sounds, it has been a life-changing trip. Yeah. And I still need to figure it out.
Yeah. I'm curious about the sense of adventure point as well, because I remember we spoke back in May.
Yes.
And you were very clear that, like, you were not taking this on because of the adventure aspect, which is what appeals to a lot of people who take on challenges like this.
Yeah.
Not that there's that many people who are taking on challenges like this.
Yeah.
But, you know, adventure was not a big part of it. And now you're kind of coming out of it saying, actually, it did reintroduce that sense of adventure for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you know what? It's made me completely rethink what it is that I want to get out of my life. And, you know, when I look back on my kind of journey through life, it's certainly been a meandering path, because I've never had this kind of drive like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, or I certainly wasn't like, oh, I want to be a physio. It was something that kind of came to me through an opportunity that was there at the time. And so it was never this real big drive to kind of be where I am in my career, in my life. It's just like making the most of opportunities as they arise. And adventure was something that never really appealed to me. But obviously this fundraiser gave me an opportunity to explore that. And what that adventure has kind of led me to learn about myself is that although I don't have a vocation that I necessarily want to strive to achieve or work within, there is a way that I would like to live and conduct my life, which so happens to be around creating stories and memories. And there was a quote that Scott, who was up in Thurso, he owns a bar up there, and he does a lot of his own arts and crafts. And there's a quote on the wall, and it basically says, "If you live an ordinary life, you'll only have ordinary stories." And so that really kind of resonated with me. And so this kind of adventure aspect of the trip has given me a whole series of stories and life experiences that you just don't get if you're not doing stuff like this. And so for me, the adventure aspect is not necessarily, you know, being the first person to do this, that, or the other. It's the stories that come from it being awful, screwing up, you know, all of these kind of like these rich learning experiences that you can find learning and humour in. I think are so rich, and I think that is what appeals to me within the adventure.
Yeah.
And that has come probably only because it was so hard. And that is why I'm like also, you know, quite grateful in some regard that it panned out the way that it did.
When you think about what it means to then like reorient yourself and your life around story and adventure in that sense.
It's actually very depressing coming back. Coming back after 3 days and living the same existence that I had before, that I'd now realised that I wanted to escape.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is it. You know what, the Thames 200 weekend, whatever weekend that was probably the first weekend or the first point in the trip where, or not the trip, since I'd been back, where I felt like I'd psychologically adjusted to being back. Otherwise, to be honest, it'd been really depressing, flat, low, just, and you know, you can obviously rationalize that, you know, you're having this big adrenaline dump, this huge chapter in your life has kind of closed, but, you know, obviously it doesn't change anything, you still feel the way that you feel. And so kind of like going through that was just, it was what it was. I think the fact that it was depressing is a byproduct of it being so kind of affirming and life-changing. I think
the low
you
came
can't
after the high.
I really, one of the things this trip has taught me is that you cannot have one without the other. And in fact, the other tends to enhance. So like these lows, these lows down here, maybe even in the basement, they so complement and enhance the highs. And yeah, so that, I think it took probably 3 weeks, which I don't think is actually that bad.
And there are some other people out there who are now interested in the circumnavigation.
Yes.
Which is, so I know one of them who's announced it publicly is Sebastian Surfski.
Yes.
Who is one of the 2 Brazilian paddlers who set the Thames record, but I think he lives in
Poland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he Brazilian?
Or he competed for Brazil at the Olympics, I believe.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hear you've been talking to a few other people as well.
Yeah, so like there's been a number of people that have contacted me off the back of it, asking for advice. 2 of them are wanting to break world records, one rowing and one Sebastian. And another was just inquiring around the nature of the trip because he wants to, I think he just wants to paddle around Scotland.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, maybe the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
I think he said the whole of the UK and then was like, oh no, maybe just Scotland. It's like you're choosing the best and the worst bit. So if you're going to do Scotland, you may as well just do the rest. It is, yeah. You can do Scotland, you can do everything else.
Yeah. Oh my God. It does sound like that was the most intense part. You got to see wildlife up there too, right?
Yeah, it was so bumpy, wildlife was washing into the boat. I would regularly have fish in the footwell. One day actually, so this was my last day leaving Scotland on the East Coast. So there's about this 6 foot swell coming kind of like tail cross side on. It was another not unpleasant day out.
Yeah.
And there's this headland just south of Dunbar that gets a little bit, spicy. Mm-hmm. And as I was going through that, like the waves were just just going all over the place. And at one point I looked down my footwell and there was a crab and a fish.
Oh.
It's like crab is a new one. I've been having fish since Cornwall wash into the boat.
That's amazing.
And yeah.
Oh, man.
But otherwise, the East Coast probably provided the most amount of wildlife, which I wasn't expecting. Yeah.
What did you see along the East Coast then?
Probably the most interesting one, there was a tiny little sunfish.
Oh.
So not big. It was probably, the fin was probably only about that, but it was just like doing that. I was like, what the hell is that? And I actually thought it was a turtle initially, because I was like, I hadn't seen anything like that. Wow. And was only when about 3 or 4 days later, someone had actually filmed it and identified it as a sunfish in Yorkshire. But yeah, apparently you do get turtles and sunfish. They're rare, but they do go up and down that east coast of England, which is just...
That's so cool.
Yeah, like I would not have thought that. I didn't even think they get, like, Sunderland gets loads of dolphins.
Wow.
Who would have thought that?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Since there are some other people who are interested, I know you're giving some advice around, Isle of Mull.
Yeah. Just get a ferry.
Like skip it.
Yeah.
What else? What do you think are going to be the key ingredients to success for people who want to try and take this on in the future?
I mean, like the most obvious one is the weather.
Yeah.
The weather will dictate whether a bit of water is flat or literally horrendous. But because that is an element that is outside your control, it's almost null and void talking about it. But one of the things that's been really interesting talking to people about their respective record attempts is that it seems to me that everyone that goes for this goes through the same thought process, only for when you actually do it for it all to change. And so for me, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to use the 6-hour tide windows. I'm only going to paddle with the tide with me. And then you kind of do it and you realise, actually, unless you can really adjust to those biphasic sleep patterns, it's actually not that viable. And so I think the main thing is the daily routine. But probably if I was going to do it again, I would actually, in a perfect world, if I had the time and resources to have done so, I probably would have tried to have done a week of the trip, maybe 3 or 4 weeks out, to kind of almost get to that place where your body's adjusted. Because what happens is the first week or two, your body's just trying to like figure out what the hell we're doing. And then after that, you get into this rhythm that is really quite sustainable. Like if I didn't finish on day 58, you get to a point where you probably could just keep going around.
Yeah.
Like forever. Well, probably not forever, but like you could certainly just keep going. And so you run the risk of potentially losing quite a bit of time in the first 2 weeks. But at the same time, if you go too hard in those first 2 weeks, you probably will never recover if you go into too much of a deficit at that point. So it's this real sweet spot. But I think if you ended up doing a 1 week trial run of that mileage, about 3 or 4 weeks out, so you've got 2 or 3 weeks for your body to fully recover, but it's got that kind of adaptation already there.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be a bit of a game changer.
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, but I also think the route that I did was looking, because I basically plotted it all out. I actually think the route I did was really efficient in the end.
Okay.
But it was horrible because you had to do so many big crossings.
Yeah.
But I think it was only 3,020k, which I think was nearly 200k less than Dougal's. So there's definitely quite a lot of mileage you can chop off if you're willing, and you can chop off even more than that if you're willing to do a 100-kilometre crossing from Wick to Fraserburgh. That would save you a day and a half, 2 days just doing that.
Wow.
So there's definitely quite a few ways that you can adapt and change it.
Yeah.
But I think crossing over to Ireland is like, if the weather allows that, that's the quickest route for sure.
Okay.
Not the Cardigan Bay, Isle of Mull,
Yeah.
no, Isle of Man.
When you briefly thought you were going to do that, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that would have, because of that storm, that would have had to, like, that just would have been,
option.
That's the only option. Yeah, that or quit.
Yeah.
Which I just wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm glad you made it over to Ireland.
yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
The day after that storm, there was some fairly sizable chop knocking around. So, and like that would have been a day where I would have had to have probably crossed the Cardigan Bay, and it would have been awful. It really would have been awful. So I'm glad I avoided that.
Seriously. Wow.
Yeah.
It's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Anything else that you really want people to know?
There is a film being made that's been released on the 1st of February. So that looks like it's going to be a feature film, roughly 30 minutes long. It's actually, do you know what, when I sent the footage for that, there was actually a lot of stuff that I didn't post that's kind of going into that I think will be interesting. And I think that's the main thing.
Cool. Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me.